Hey everybody, this is Captain Muniz with Nomad Fishing Charters, and today I'm going to take you through a simple 100-hour service on my Mercury 150 4-strokes. I'm going to show you how to change the oil filter, lower unit oil, and the fuel filter. Stay tuned. Before I get started with the oil change, I wanted to thank all of you that have subscribed to the channel and welcome you back. Don't forget to like the channel and leave your comments if you have any questions, if you have recommendations for future videos. Hope you enjoy this. I like to run the engine for a couple minutes, let the oil warm up so it's not so viscous, so it can flow a little easier when I pull the plug. So I've got my earmuffs connected and the water flowing. You could see it there. And all we need to do now is turn the engine over and let the engine run for a couple minutes. Okay, now that we have the engine warmed up, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the lower unit oil, just because it takes a little extra time for that to drain. So what I like to do is I like to trim the motor up just so it's a little bit easier. We have to remove the propeller in order to get to those bolts, those plugs. So I'm going to remove the propeller, check for line, make sure there's no line jammed in there that could damage the seals and cause a problem with the lower unit. So I'm going to start by removing that propeller first. You don't have to bring it up all the way, just high enough so you could work. I like to use a 2x4 to hold the prop in place. But before I do that, I have to loosen these tabs here that lock the nut in place. It keeps the nut from spinning out. So it's a lock nut, it's a large lock nut. So I need to loosen that, but before I do that, I have to see these tabs down here. I have to get them loose. So I'm going to use a smaller flat screwdriver to kind of open them up a little bit. I don't have to open them up a lot, just enough so I can get the larger screwdriver in there. And there's two sides to it, so once I do both sides, I can come back with the larger screwdriver and just open them up some more. And I just take the hammer and I can go ahead and flatten those out, and that's going to allow that nut to come off. So I'm going to use a prop wrench, and again the 2x4 is just going to hold the prop from spinning and get that loose. Once I get it started, I don't need the 2x4 anymore. I can just hold it with my hand. I could actually spin the prop the other way and everything will come loose. So I've got the nut out, and now what I like to do, if possible, just take everything out together so it all stays in place and everything can go back right to see. This rush washer needs to come out also. Now when I do this, I like to go in here and inspect and make sure there's no fishing line down in there. There are seals down there, and if you get fishing line in there, it'll damage your seals and then your lower unit will be compromised. So it looks like it's a good thing I don't see any line, which is always a good thing. It always makes me very happy to see that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen this bolt here. This is the drain for the lower unit oil. So I'm just going to pop it loose here. I'm not loosening up all the way yet, just a little bit. Then I'm going to come over up here, and there's a second plug. I'm going to loosen that one as well, the longer of the two. And then once I release the top bolt, you're going to see the oil really start to come down. This one's a short one. And both of these have little gaskets. In this case, both gaskets were left behind. So I'm going to have to take a little pick or something and get that gasket out of there, because I'm going to replace it with two brand new gaskets. So now I'm going to use this pick to go in here and remove the old gasket. There it is. And there should be another one down here. They usually come out with the bolts for some reason. These were in there pretty good and they didn't come out, so. This one's playing hard to get. All right, there it is. Got the second one. And we're gonna replace these two with two brand new ones. It's really important. It only costs a couple bucks and it's a good investment because this is the only thing between the salt water and your lower unit. All right, now the next step, while we're waiting for the lower unit oil to drain, we're gonna loosen the plug here. This is for the engine oil. We're gonna take this with a 5/8 wrench. We're gonna loosen it just a little bit. Not gonna loosen it up all the way. I'll show you why. Just a little bit, maybe a couple turns. Just a little bit. Then I'm gonna take this bucket. I already did the other engine, but you can see I've got this set up with a clamp and a hose, and we're going to use this hose so that the oil goes directly from the engine to the bucket without making a mess. So we're going to connect our hose. We're going to go back in with the wrench and loosen it until that oil starts to flow again. Gotta keep an eye on it. I've used this hose many times, so it's pretty dark. You can't always see the oil, but right now you can see the oil. It's already coming down. See it there? It's going right in the bucket. The best part is we didn't make a mess. Everything's going neatly into the bucket. Now we just gotta wait a few minutes, let all the oils drain out, and then we'll be ready to start installing everything back. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and remove the cowling. All you do is you pull back on this until it snaps open, and then with both hands, you're gonna push up until you break the seal, and carefully raise it. Then you're gonna carefully put it down. You do not wanna drop this because they are not cheap. And right now the engine is exposed. As you can see over here, we have the oil filter. It's pretty easy to get to. We have the dipstick, and we have our fuel filter down here. We're gonna start with the fuel filter. We're gonna do that first. We're gonna knock that out while the oil's draining. It's down in there, but it will come out. All right, now that I've got the filter out here where we can work on it, this is a pretty simple system. These are quick connects. This filter has a flow direction. You might not be able to see it on camera. There's a little arrow there which tells you that the fuel is flowing this way. It's flowing downward. So what you have to do is, first rule, do not let this go. Once you have this hose in your hand, under no circumstances should you let that go. If you let it go, it's going to go right down into that midsection, and it's going to be very hard to get it out. It's happened to me before, that's why I know. So you hold on to this and you do not let go. I'm gonna push this down, this red button, and it should pop right out. There you go. Sometimes it'll leak a little fuel that's in there. You're gonna take your filter, make sure it's in the right position, and you're gonna snap that in. You heard it snap there? It's locked in place. Now I could let it go because it's not going anywhere. Okay, now we're gonna carefully undo this one. Same thing, we're gonna push down on that red button. That's gonna release it. I just had some fuel shoot out. That's normal. We're gonna pull the filter back out. We're gonna slide this handle over the filter and push it down. And then we're gonna take this top hose and push it down until it snaps. There you go, it's locked in. Now we're gonna take the whole assembly and carefully work it back into its opening. Got the shifter cables there, so you have to wiggle them around a little bit to get in there. But eventually you make it go all the way down. Once you get it down in there, you're going to push down with both hands. Not a real big space, but you can make it happen. Just keep moving it, and then you're going to get that tub. That tab is going to go under this black piece right here. This is what holds this in place and keeps the whole assembly from popping out. As you can see the arrow there. When you're ready to pull it back out, all you got to do is pull on it and it'll be loose. So I'm going to push it back into place. That's ready to go. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove this little plug here. And there's a little small little reservoir here that catches oil from the filter when you are replacing the filter. It keeps oil from spilling out all over the engine. It'll go right into that reservoir, and it can use the same hose we used down here. The same hose we use down here, we can connect up here and catch that oil so you don't make a mess. So we're going to take this and we're going to put this away so we don't lose it. And we're going to come back with our filter wrench and we're going to loosen our filter. There it is. Before I do that all the way, I'm going to attach my hose so it'll catch any of that oil. There it is. When I undo the filter, it's going to drain right into there, and that's going to go right down into the bucket. No mess, no fuss. There's your filter, and everything's nice and clean. Now we're going to check to make sure the old gasket came off. I've had it happen where they stick and you try to install a new filter over the old filter. That's a problem. It won't make a good seal. So just check to make sure everything is nice and clean and good, and I could take my new filter and spin it on. Here's my new filter. I've already lubed the gasket. You just take it. It's always good to leave the hose on there in case you get a little dripping, and make sure the threads go on nice and easy. If they're not nice and easy, then you got them cross-threaded, and you have to be very careful because you don't want to damage that. Now you take your wrench, your filter wrench, and you tighten it. You don't have to tighten it too much, just enough where it's snug. Maybe like a half a turn. All right, that's not going anywhere. Now we can go ahead and remove the hose and put our plug back in. Oops, I dropped. So we're going to take our plug and push it right back in there, and that's good to go. So our filter's nice and tight. Our filter's nice and tight. Our fuel filter's in, and we're ready to go on that front. Now we're going to proceed to fill the lower unit with some 90 gear lube. We're going to fill from the bottom to the top. That allows for all the air to escape, and it gets your lower unit nice and full. I'm going to show you a couple tricks here. Take this and go ahead and thread it on there so it's nice and tight. Now we're going to pump. It's going to take a little while because we have to pump an entire quart into it. Okay, so we're almost full. Oh, there you have it. It's coming out of the top. You can see it there. That tells me it's full. So now we're going to add the upper plug first. That's going to keep the oil from running out. Just get a couple. I'm just going to get a couple of turns on it. There you go. That's good enough. For now, we're going to come back and retighten it. We're also going to tighten our oil plug. The oil is pretty much drained out. Make sure it's nice and tight. Now, a little trick I like to do is to trim the engine up. Now I can go ahead and remove the hose from here without a lot of that oil spilling. Keeps everything nice and clean. You could see there that it's completely full. We didn't lose any oil in the transition. So now we're going to take our plug, our final plug. This is a long one that goes on the bottom, and we're just going to get it on there hand tight. Make sure the threads go on nice and clean. As you can see, it's spinning freely. That means the threads are on perfect. Just hand tighten it as far as we can go. with the new gasket, of course. And then we're going to take our screwdriver, our heavy duty screwdriver, and tighten it real good. Okay, so take a rag here, tighten that real good. You don't want any water intrusion. We're going to go back to the original plug, the top plug, and we're going to tighten that one as well. Once we have everything tightened up, I like to take a rag and just dry up any grease, make sure everything is nice and clean. Do that on both sides. Okay, the other thing we're going to be doing is we're going to take some marine grade grease, and we're going to grease these splines here, because this keeps the propeller from seizing, and it'll make removing it next time a lot easier. We're also going to put some grease down here. We've already checked this. We always want to check this down here, make sure there's no fishing line in there. If you do get fishing line in there, it'll damage your seal and it'll allow water to get into that lower unit, and lower units are not cheap, so you want to keep that from happening. Okay, so we got everything lubed up, ready to go. Now we're going to put our prop back in, starting with that thrust washer that goes in first. Then we're going to take our prop and carefully drop it in and make sure that everything lines up nice and straight. Sometimes they go right in, sometimes they don't. There it is. Now we're going to take our lock washer, slide that in until it's lined up with those tabs, and then we're going to take our lock nut and we're going to thread it. You always want to start it off by hand, just make sure your threads are going on nice and easy. Then we're going to take our prop wrench and proceed to tightening it. All right, so now we've tightened up the nut, and if you can see, the tabs are there. We're going to take the large screwdriver and we're going to bend those tabs back to where they were. There's one. Okay, gotta get them as close to the nut as possible, and here's the second. These usually break after 3 or 4 times, so you always want to have some spares in case they break. It's not a big deal, but it's nice to have them because it just gives you a little more security. It keeps the nut from backing back out. So that's secure. The prop is on, everything's lubed up. We're done at this point. Now we're going to drop the motor so we can go ahead and fill it with some 6 quarts of oil. Now we're going to go ahead and pour the oil in here. It's going to be basically 1.5 gallons or 6 quarts. All right, so now that we've got the oil filled, we got our 6 quarts in there, we're going to go ahead and tighten the lid, and we're going to take our grease gun, and there's some fittings here for the steering. We're going to go ahead and grease those. Get some oil in there. These were already greased, and we're also going to take some anti-corrosion spray. Spray everything down. Try to keep everything in good shape in that harsh salt environment. That should do the trick right there. The last thing we're going to do is going to pull the oil, the dipstick, and we're going to check our range. Our range should be somewhere along here. So we're going to take it, drop it in there, and check it. When the oil's clean, it's very hard to see sometimes. So I don't know if you can see it on camera. There it is, right there. So that's perfect. We're in that range. All right, let's slide that back in there. Perfect. There it is. I like to turn it back in so it doesn't catch the cowling when I cover the engine again. Just make sure everything is good. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start the engine and check for leaks, make sure that there's no leaks, that there's no problems. Now we're going to take the earmuffs and we're going to attach it to the lower unit. Got to make sure that all the openings are covered and that the water's getting in the engine real good. Once they're on there good, we're going to go fire up the engine and check to make sure there's no leaks or no problems. All right, so now we're just going to start it up. Checking for leaks, make sure there's no leaks, make sure everything is perfect. Now we're going to wrap it up by putting the cowling back on the engine. It's important to go on straight. It should sit on the front part first, and then you're going to just pull down on it until it snaps in place. This latch will go back into its place. You can pull on it a couple times, make sure it's solid. Well guys, there you have it. This skill can help you save hundreds or thousands of dollars over the years. As you can see, it wasn't that difficult. Just takes a couple tools, a little patience, and time. Until next time, my name is Captain Orlando Muniz with Nomad Fishing Charters.